So the new 2024 Fiat 500e. This was built dedicated as an EV. I have always been a massive fan of the 500 ever since the first iteration and the Abarth with the manual transmissions. This one, as I said, was built from the ground up to be an EV. Love this design. It's such a funky design. This is one of these cars where you can tell the designers actually had a lot of fun designing this car. This one being the red edition, all these badges in the front and the back and some graphics all around the car is red. You can have this specific version in 3 colors, red, black, or white. I think it looks fantastic in red. But even though the design is so cool, still love it, there are still some issues with this specific model that I think is going to make it very hard to sell it here in the US. That's what we're going to talk about in this video. We also, of course, need to talk about this design, the front end, the side, the rear, the beautiful interior. Then we're going to take this for a drive and I'm going to let you know what the range of this thing is as well. The 2024 Fiat 500e Red Edition is powered by a single motor. You got a 149-mile range. Not great at all. 117 horsepower, 162 pound-feet of torque connected to a 1-speed automatic. Front-wheel drive only. 0 to 60 takes about 8.7 seconds. Top speed goes up to 94 miles per hour. And the price for this is $34,000. Starting with the very unique front end of the Fiat 500. In this case, you can see that we still have a lot of roundness in this car. We still have this beautiful nose here. You have the big 500 logo in the front end. Further down, we do have this intake down here for the battery with the beautiful graphics down here. I like that everything in this car is red. Everything is body painted, giving this more sporty vibe to this design, in addition to the beautiful graphics that we have in the front end as well. As I said in the beginning, it feels like the designers had a lot of fun designing these cars. I love the new interpretation of the round headlights. You can see we have this cut line right here that cuts right in between the full LED headlights, but still retaining this round shape. We're gonna look at this from straight front view. You're gonna see that this headlight looks like a full circle, even though it stretches very far into the side of the car. And then we have this beautiful cutout for the indicator here with the red little island in the middle. Overall, it just looks very cool and very funky. It doesn't have this angry, aggressive look to it. That would not suit a 500 at all. And I do love this update. We also have some graphics down here, some black graphics that doesn't look to be functional. Just for some styling purposes, putting some black graphics at the very corners of the front end. This is unmistakably a Fiat 500. Coming up close and personal with this headlight unit here. Love the cutout. We have one cutout up here and also this cutout like we just talked about for the indicator. And then on the inside of this housing, you have more LEDs, 3 LED strips on this black background for the housing, looking very beautiful and looking sort of upscale when you have all these small details in the car. You can also see how this bulges out here with the beautiful fenders from the view you're looking at right now. We're also going to talk about what this little fin is here, something we don't get in the US, but that they do get in Europe. Coming around to the side view of the Fiat 500, we do have some new styling features, specifically when it comes to the graphics, but the overall proportions basically look exactly like the old internal combustion engine version. We have a nice shoulder line here. You can see where it starts right in the corner of the taillights, cutting all the way through here into this piece right here. And this is actually the side indicator for Europe. But thanks to some boring regulations that we have here in the United States, they weren't allowed to put the side indicator here. So I guess this piece right here is actually what functions as the side indicator, because it sits on sort of the side of the car, which is something you need to have on every single car. The wheel and tire setup here, we have 205s all around, 17-inch wheels. Love the design of these wheels. Again, we don't have Fiat anywhere. Instead, we have 500 here in the center of the wheel. As I said, this design is one of my favorite designs on sale today. It's just a shame that we're going to talk more about what's what I think is wrong with this car when we take this for a drive later on. But the design, the proportions, classic Italian styling. We do have all the black around the greenhouse here. You can see we have a new feature down here as well. Dips down a little bit here and says 500 again on this rubber piece in the back part of the greenhouse. They also removed the door handles here. So the doors handles actually sit flush right here, and that is supposedly to help with the aerodynamics. So you open the door by just sticking your hand in here, and that's, you have a release button inside here. Another thing we don't get here in the US is the 4-door version. So in Europe they do have this half door in this area, so you can, I do believe you open it that way, but that's something they're not going to bring to the United States either. Coming around to the rear end, and I love everything about this design. It's such a cool design, starting up top with this big roof spoiler. If you look at it from a side view, clearly has this sporty design to it with a nice beautiful chamfer going up top as well. Again, this being the red edition, it actually says Fiat here in the back. So we do have one Fiat badge on this car, which is this one right here in red. You have the wiper visible, which is totally fine for cars in this size and in this price segment. I don't really mind that. Overall, I do believe this is probably my favorite view for this car, because you can see the stance of this car. I also love the front end design, but I've always loved these planted look that every single 500 has, and this one has that as well. Now, this has been a full electric car. We do have charging ports right here, but of course we're not going to have any cool exhaust notes like the old Abarth, which sounded so angry. It sounded like it's so small that it needs to make a big noise to intimidate other cars. That was the old Abarth. I love the sound of that thing. Nice, beautiful chamfers here as well. And further down low, we do have the reverse lights right there. And if we open this up, you wouldn't expect this to have a lot of trunk space, and we really don't have that in this car either. Can't open it, so let's find the key so we can actually show you what's going on here in the back. As I said, not huge space back here, but you can fold down these rear seats 50-50 folding, and that will give you a little bit more space back here. I wouldn't say that this back seat would be comfortable for tall drivers such as myself at 6'1", 6'2". I would probably not feel very comfortable back there. Underneath here, you do get the charger and a compressor for if you get a flat as well. So let's close this back down. This is obviously not power assisted, totally fine for me. Now, these taillights are absolutely gorgeous. I love how it connects to this line up here. It also says made in Torino right there. We also have that in the interior, in the door handle. I'm going to show you that in a minute. But beautiful design here, clearly a modernization of the previous generation 500 in a very beautiful but still very easily identifiable design. Let's check out if the interior is as funky as the exterior. And when you jump in here, you can clearly tell that this is an Italian design, and that is what I've always loved about the 500. It's such a funky design. You can see that the exterior color actually comes in here on the dashboard. We have a 10.2-inch infotainment screen with some rounded corners. It feels a little bit like it's floating in the middle of nowhere, but it's not the worst integration I've seen. You also have a completely digital gauge cluster here, which you can configure. You also have different drive modes, which changes up the design here, but you can have a bunch of different information here. And this is what I want to see from a full gauge cluster, to have either you can have a full navigation, you can see how much your the power, the regen, and so on. Very useful to have this. And in addition to that, it also sits in this beautiful round housing. Look at this cave that we have going on here. Exactly what I want to see. So this infotainment screen here, I actually did have some problems with it when the first time I got in this car. I was trying to check out the different menus here, and they were sort of overlapping, and I couldn't do anything about it. You have different menus overlapping on top of each other, but that thankfully went away after about 5 minutes or so. But here you can see home screen. You have the climate settings here. You also have thankfully the climate settings here with these buttons. So thankfully you can both adjust the climate in the infotainment screen if you want to, or you have the physical buttons down here, which is absolutely fantastic. Going into vehicle here, you can see the power flow, driving history, schedules, and a lot of different things here as well. And the navigation is decent. It's not the best navigation I've seen, but you still have it here. Further down, we do have this integration of the vents, looking very clean because it's in one single beautiful line like this. Very easy, of course, to adjust the air and where you want the air to come out from. And this array of buttons here. So on the left side here, this does not have dual climate zones. It's only one single zone here, which is totally fine for this type of vehicle. You have the dial or the toggle for the temp here, AC controls where you want the air to blow out from, and you have the fan speed on the very far right. Super easy to figure out how to work this thing, and that's what I want to see in cars, where you have an array of buttons. You can also, if you want to, you can still adjust the temp inside of the screen. Now down here, this is a pretty cool wireless charger because you can just slide your phone in here. It is definitely not going to go anywhere because this is a very steep angle downwards, and it's also rubberized. In addition to that, it looks like you have the skyline of Torino stamped in to this pad where you're going to have your phone resting. So small little details like that is very cool. You also have a USB regular outlet right here, and this beautiful design for housing everything. The start button is located right here, and down here you have the drive selector. So you have park, of course, reverse, putting it into reverse, gonna pop up the reverse camera. You do have trajectory lines, and the resolution is not the best resolution I've seen, but it's still gonna help you back up and not hit any big vehicles. Neutral and drive, of course, put it back into park. Now this is pretty cool too. You have all this space here, even though, man, I wish with a design like this, I wish we had an internal combustion version of this car with a manual transmission, and on a Barth version, some cooler wheels, a little lower, more planted, sounding very angry, even though it doesn't really have that much power. But in this case, this being an EV, completely empty space down here, and this cup holder, you can fold it up and down. If you want more space, you can fold it up. If you want a cup holder here, just fold it back down. Now, this is the drive mode selector right here. So you have three different drive modes. You have normal, range, or Sherpa. I like to keep it in range because when you put it in Sherpa, it limits the top speed to 50 miles per hour, and it's for if you go down on very low range, that's probably when you might want to put it in Sherpa to just make sure you get home. But you could have it in normal, or you could have it in range. I like to have it in range because you get a little bit more regen when you lift off the gas. So that seems to be the sweet spot. You also have the volume knob here, and let's turn the AC back on because the AC also turned off when I put it in Sherpa. Further back, you do have some storage here. Not a lot of storage, but you do have two USB-C, one USB-C, one USB regular, a cigarette outlet here as well. And you have this small little armrest with some additional storage there. Not a lot. This is a small car. Keep that in mind. So the storage is not going to be crazy in this car, which is totally understandable. Looking at these seats, love the seats. They're cloth seats. You have 500 red sort of stamped on the backrest here. Decent side support. I mean, this is not a fast car. You're not going to take corners at high speeds in this car. But still, the seats look pretty sporty to me. It says Fiat all over the inserts here. So I take that back. We do have a couple of Fiat badges in or letters, logos in this design. You just have to look for them. In this case, they are embroidered into the seats. They're looking very cool. Now the steering wheel here, very clean layout of the steering wheel. We have again the red, this being the red edition, you have the red 500 here in the middle. The horn sounds pretty cool. Sounds very Italian to me. And then you have the settings for the cruise control settings here, and you have the settings to configure the gauge cluster right here on this side. In addition to the voice commands, no paddles for the regen braking. In this case, you only have the 3 drive modes. You have the indicators right here and the window washer fluid and stuff like that right here on the right side. Now, looking at these doors, I love that it says "Made in Torino" inside of this door handle. And these are, you open it with a button, and if the button fails, you do have another release down here, a manual release. But I do like the button designs, same buttons that we have on the start button here. So you just press this button, that's Very easy to open up the door. Looking up top, you don't have any sort of sunroof in here. Totally fine for me. I like it like this, as I'm sure you know already. And as I said, the back seat for the US market, they actually do get cup holders in the center, which you don't get on the European version. But I'm not gonna try and climb in there because I can see already it's just not going to work. So I'm not gonna even try to get in the back seat of this car. Last but not least, you do have a pretty massive glove box for a Fiat 500. Let's get out of here and let's see how this Fiat 500e drives. I said in the beginning that there are a couple of issues I have with this car. And those issues has to do with the performance. Not the 0 to 60 time, 8.7 seconds by the way. Not the best 0 to 60 time, but I really don't care about 0 to 60 in this specific car. What I care about is the range. And then you combine that with the price that you have to pay for this one, specifically the red edition. And it sort of becomes a pretty hard sell, even though I do think you pay a lot for the exterior design and the funkiness and the uniqueness of this car, which is nothing wrong with that. If you're that into the 500, then this might be a car for you. But the range, all right, so the range is about 150 miles. So if I was still living downtown Milano and studying car design, if I was still living there, this might be a good option if I was just darting around inside of the city center. But as soon as you start even thinking about road trips, longer road trips, or even just heading outside of town, the range is going to be an issue. So I'm down to 65% now on the battery, and I have 92 miles of range left. We do have a pretty small battery in this case, front wheel drive only, single motor, motor is located right on the hood, so we don't have a frunk in this either. And the pricing, $34,000. For that price, you could get a used Tesla Model 3 Performance, or an even long range with over 300 miles of range. So that is where I think this car has some problems when it comes to the the selling points of this car. But again, it's such a funky design. I love this design. I've always loved, as I said, the Fiat 500. It's such a cool looking car. But I do wish they still had, at least would offer, I don't know if a hybrid would be a good choice, because a hybrid would add weight to this car. This is also the lightest EV on sale today. So I think it's 2,700 pounds or something like that, which is very light. But that doesn't help the range. So you have these 3 different drive modes. I mean, range now, meaning that I do have pretty good regen when I let off the gas. And then you can go into this Sherpa mode. I don't understand why they called it Sherpa, but I went into the Sherpa mode now. It's 92 degrees out. And when I went into Sherpa, I turned off the AC. So I don't have AC anymore. And if I try to accelerate here, boom, we hit 50 and it just stops accelerating. That's the speed limit you have in Sherpa. I have to put it back in range, otherwise I'm gonna die of dehydration and heat stroke in here. So let's turn the AC back on. There we go. Nice blow, increase the fan a little bit maybe. Don't want it too loud so you can still hear me. But overall, the performance here, 119 horsepower, 162 pound-feet of torque. Not impressive numbers. But again, I don't really care about that. I just wish it had a bigger battery. If this had a bigger battery and kept the price point at $34,000, then I think it would be a pretty good EV, specifically when it looks this funky. But can you imagine, they did make an Abarth version of this. It's still a full EV. I think they had it in that neon green color or some very strange color. I mean, the color looked cool, but having an Abarth 500 EV, it just does not make sense to me, because the old Abarth 500 with the manual, it was all about the shifting, going through the gears and going, flooring it through 1, 2, 3 gears, and you would still only do 45, and it sounded like a Ferrari in the back. That was what the old Abarth was all about, and you can't really substitute that with electric power, even though the design just, it's a shame because the design is so good. that I think it deserves to have an EV, an internal combustion version with this beautiful design that we have here. Now that RV up top there, that would be a awesome road trip vehicle. You have basically a living room in the back, all the luxuries you would ever need. So we're gonna go onto the highway here, and let's see if we can make it before the red light. Yeah, we did. So let's see how this does on the highway. It's actually a pretty comfortable little car, even though the wheelbase is so small, the tires are not that big. It still soaks up the road pretty good. You have an independent front suspension, and overall the handling is good because we have the battery sitting low now in this car, so it's a lot lower center of gravity than you had in the... I'm still in Sherpa mode. I can't accelerate. Come on, I thought I switched that up, so let's switch it back. If I can do that, what's going on here? There we go. This switch thing sometimes just does not respond to your inputs. Very strange. You have to like press it several times to switch drive modes. But now we're in normal mode. We're doing 70 miles per hour. We're down to 82 miles of range. Another thing with this design is you have these huge B-pillars here creating a absolutely massive blind spot. And even for $34,000, you don't get blind spot monitoring in this car. You know, stuff like you get in base Hyundais these days, you don't get in the 500e. Cruising along here, beautiful day today, and if this had longer range, I could definitely drive this for very long distances because it is very, very comfortable. But the range is gonna mess that up. You're gonna have to stop every, I don't know on the highway how long it takes to drain this battery. But you really need to plan your trips if you plan on taking a 500e on a longer road trip. So the final verdict for me is, love this car, love the design of this car. The only problem is going to be the range and the pricing. I think that is going to make it a hard sell, specifically here in the US, where everybody relies so much on cars for transportation. And you can get the EV6, you can get the older Teslas for the same price point. It's going to be very hard to sell this. And I think it's going to be a very niche audience that loves the 500 for what it is, the design and so on, the Italian influences that we have here. I think those are probably going to be the only buyers for this car.